Our program today is preserving photographs. Joette will introduce our guest.
Well, I've been here in Michigan 50 years, but my husband's been here all his life, and I suspect that he went to this little house on Dixie Highway to get his senior pictures taken, or your dad went to the school. I just don't know which one.
They came to the studio.
Okay, so you've probably driven down Dixie Highway for years, and Sayles studio was in that house, and so we didn't know Beth but we got some photographs from our relatives as people died, and so I called her up and said, she's gonna yes.
For instance.
Yes, and probably she has seen more of these. This is not the retouched one. This is the original, and they're over 100 years old. And you've got them in your closet, and you're like, I don't want to put that up, and I don't want a huge one. What do I do? So I visited Beth and got to know her a little bit, and she's helped us with a lot of photographic needs over the years. And she told me that they have been in business for since 1950?
66 years.
66 years, 1950. And she's going to tell you a little more about her, but she's one of our residents extraordinaire, and Jose talked to her, and she agreed to come, and we're so happy to have you.
Oh, thank you so much, Joette. Thank you very much for inviting me, and it's so nice to see a few familiar faces. As Joette mentioned, my mother and father moved into this stone bungalow located on Dixie Highway in 1950 with the intentions of setting up a portrait studio and housing our family there. The family did reside, well, initially when they moved in, and it was before I was born, they set up residence in the upper flat and in the front room and the living room. They had a reception area, working primarily as most photographers do. They did mostly community events, such as weddings, and from this evolved after they had rented office space across the street for about a year, and they themselves at that time lived on Mesa Day Lake in Clarkston. The kids went to Clarkston schools. So when my mother observed that the family was moving out of this structure, she got all excited because she didn't like being, two places away from the kids. And upon moving in, my father proceeded it had a Michigan basement, so he proceeded to dig down, and there was conveyor belts of dirt going out so that he could construct darkroom and camera room to separate the business from the residence. We stayed there 64 years, and I've recently moved. I'll go through some slideshows and talk to you as we go along. So in case you're not familiar with our old address, this is the strip of Dixie Highway, and this is our house right here.
That was some years ago, though, right?
This is 1950. And there's a theater. Let's see, can I zoom in? Oh, I'm confused. Yeah, this is so nice that I can. Isn't it wonderful? When you get into converting your paper images to digital, then you have the luxury of doing this sort of thing and zooming in and finding the details that are hard to see even with a magnifying glass. So yeah, there was a theater there, quite the Dixie Highway, huh? And there's our little sign. Adjacent to us is now, what's it called? Oh, it's a bingo hall. And on the opposite side is a pawn shop. Here it was a cheese shop. Yep. So, 3 years later, let me introduce you to my parents. There they are. Alice Sayles and my father, Red Sayles. He had a lot of fun with that name. His real name, his formal name is Harold, but he had red hair, and they called kids with red hair red. And of course, evolving out of the World War II was that famous song, Red Sails in the Sunset. And oh my goodness, could they dance on the floor to that one. Oh. This is me, la-di-da, and a sampling of their competition prints. They specialized in portraiture. Although my dad did delve into commercial photography, it was portraiture that sustained our business primarily for all those years. There she is. Initially, my father was the shutterbug, and they lived in Detroit prior to moving to Mesa Day Lake. He was an engineer with the auto industry, but he would practice family photos in their living room, just like today. I mean, it's come full circle. Nobody really needs a storefront anymore if you have space in social media. And so, although she wasn't the photographer, she was the mother. She lended a hand with tinting the photographs, and she became very skilled at that. This is an example of one. This was taken just a week after I was born, 1953. And there's a cartoon. Now that was the equipment she used to use. Eventually, my father was so busy in the darkroom, and my brother, who was 15 years my senior, and my father decided they needed to train Mom to take the pictures so that Dad could be freed up to run the darkroom. There was film to be developed. Well, first of all, you had to load the film in sheets, no less. 5x7 sheets of film, about that size. And then there was the darkroom to in the same darkroom, process the film, and then of course the printing. Oh my goodness, what a labor-intense business to run. All in our house. Oh my God, it's a case study. So anyways, this is where we've come. This is our view camera, and my mother. And there's a familiar icon in Waterford. It's all been changed now. We did move 2 years ago, very fortunately so. The Waterford Media Network had taken an interest in our history and decided to do a documentary. At the end of the documentary, I had said, well, I hope to have an office in my new residence. I had lived in the house for the previous 10 years. So I was about to shift not only my residence, but also my office. And at the end of that interview, when I was proofing it, I said, no, that's not going to happen. You have to put cut that and put it on the floor, so to speak. And I began to cry, and I said, I don't know where I'm going with business. I had found my residence, and I knew it wasn't going to be appropriate to have an office. I had knocked and searched with all kinds of partnership kind of businesses to see if I could sublease with them, and couldn't find anything that was going to work. And she said, well, Beth, you can use our camera room right down the hall. What? Yeah, let me show it to you. Oh my goodness. In the Covert Center, located across from Waterford Mott High School on Scott Lake Road, is where the Waterford Media Network, until recently, was located. So I looked at her camera room and I said, my goodness, really? I can put all my equipment in here? Here's the key, she said. Well, how much? And she said, well, we're nonprofit, so a donation would be appreciated. Maybe do some volunteer work. Well, then I really started to cry. And I looked down the hall and I said, so what goes on in all these other old classrooms? And she said, well, they're either school offices, because the Waterford School District offices are in there, or they're nonprofits. And she said, here's who you get in touch with. I think there's an opening down at the end of the hall. And that's where I am. So this was the exterior of the building as Mom and Dad transitioned it from the residence. It was by adding these showcases to the, structure, putting in that front sign. And boy, that was a lot of square footage of display to take care of every year. I decided to take an interest in the business 2 years out of high school. I graduated from Kettering in '71. And there, by that time, my mother and father had divorced. She was chief cook and bottle wash. Well, she had a staff of 3, very important people, of course. But she never had trained up anyone to be a photographer. So I decided to be her apprentice, and that's how I've gotten to where I am. Here she's illustrating. Seniors would proudly, the parents would come in and proudly show her these senior pictures that were taken from the school photographer to put framing on them. And she'd say, you gotta be kidding me. I'd throw these in the trash. And she'd say, I'll tell you something. You give me, I'll trade you. You send them in here, I'm gonna take their picture like it should be taken, and I'll trade you mine for yours. And that was the beginning of her mission to educate people on the difference in photography. But I'm gonna skip forward because this is about restoration that I'm supposed to be talking about. I just wanted to give you a glimpse of our history. I've taught classes for aspiring photographers on the fine art of portraiture. And there's just a couple. So this is where I found myself to be. It's a wonderful little office, and I have a separate studio. There's my little sign. They won't let me put up anything permanent, but that's how you'll find me. And incidentally, in the Covert Center, they've recently opened up a new fitness center in their gym, which is just wonderful. So we've taken photography from 1,000 square feet down to an office space thanks to technology. And this is how we do it all. Thanks to Photoshop. Here's a small piece of my display outside the office. We do all kinds of work for the community, to include all those listed above. And there's a small sampling of my trophies, if you will, my credentials. This is not a real great shot of my office. I don't make proofs anymore for people to look at. We sit immediately and review the sessions outside the office, and this is my little camera room. We do that's my mother up there too. We do all kinds of different portraits. Look at them. I knew I'd get a ooh out of that one. We still have a strong presence in the high school senior market, which is what my mom and dad established the business at, whether it be, traditional or the creative. Although that's part of the reason why I had to move too. I was homesteaded into that property, so I didn't have to make pay commercial. But when the amateur arrived upon the scene on steroids, 14 years ago, when digital arrived, everybody had a niece or a daughter or somebody who had a camera system and had Photoshop, and they considered themselves professional. So, it happens. We do newborns. That's a market that's really gone to the amateur. But there's nothing like a classic. And yet, to capture emotion, I celebrate that for the amateur photographer that calls themselves professionals. I don't care if they call them, whatever. When my mother used to speak, she'd say, in America, to call yourself a photographer, you don't have to have a degree, nothing. All you got to do is call yourself a photographer. And for many years, she called herself a photographer until a neighboring businessman who was a real good photographer visited. She proudly went over to his cheese shop and said, "What do you think of these?" And he said, "You call that photography? We need to talk." So he came over. Yeah, there's a lot to be said with knowing the ins and outs of good composition, lighting, and there you have my history. This was the most extreme copy job I had ever seen. Let me see, what was his name? Oh, you all know him. He's out of the Clarkson Theater. Vern Vaccaro. He brought it in 2 pieces like this, and I took a look at that and I said, whoa, well, that's a project. To bring those 2 pieces together is going to take some time. He said, that's all right, take your time. This is my dad's, my father's general store. And I'd like it restored. I just want a 5x7, nothing big. And this is what it became. It's so exciting to restore history. What would we do without photography? Daguerreotype was our first introduction to any photography. 1835, I think it was. Thank you, Joette, for bringing me this. 1839. Since 1839, we have been able to visually record history. From there it evolved. Now, a daguerreotype was very expensive and precious, very fragile. Then it evolved to a glass ambrotype, which you all may be even somewhat familiar with, having been in the Genealogy Society. I'm sure you've probed into certain eras of certain types of photographs of your own family. The glass ambrotypes came into being about 1854. Then we went into tintypes, which if you've ever visited Greenfield Village, you've seen a studio there, required you to sit with a neck brace behind you. The exposures took 5 minutes, and no wonder no one was caught smiling. No. Then we evolved into paper prints, and now we have digital paper print. And nobody prints them anymore. Somebody brought in a stack of, I don't know, 75 family photographs that related to her mother-in-law. And she wanted to put it together for her as a memorial for her to enjoy, and for the family, of course, to be able to enjoy. I thought it was an ingenious idea to create a book, because what do you do? What have you done with this, Joette? Yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, come on. So I'm going to pass this around, and you can get a glimpse of how you can put a collection of family history put to words for generations to come. I think it's a fabulous idea. It's wonderful. My sister took it upon herself to put together memoirs of my uncle, who served in the Second World War as a paratrooper, and his brothers. I had 4 uncles return from World War II. And in the back of it, she put her collection there. Isn't that great? It consolidates it. It gives you a chance to explain history, family history and heritage, including other documents. What a great idea. I'll just pass that around. Now this she did without my help, so you can do it too, if you're so inclined.
Can you talk about how you actually...
You betcha. I won't do it with that one though. That's a little laborious. This would take that, but, well, I could go back for, let's see. Give me this. I keep forgetting I don't have to look up on the on the wall. So there's more than one way to skin a cat, isn't there? Okay, that's my...
Now, is this a full version of Photoshop? Like
It is.
$600
I
or
run
something
it.
about?
No, you can run it $10 a month.
Oh, they do now, yeah.
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 Well, I bought the
Or
initial.
Photoshop Essentials or something, just basic one.
I don't know about it. That's for amateurs.
Yeah, we're amateurs.
And so I just don't know it.
This has a pretty good learning curve on it, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unless you're doing it all the time, every day in and day out.
Yeah.
Take a couple of years to try to figure out how to use it.
And you'll never know everything it can do. I'm convinced. What do you want? What do you want? Okay, give me a... Stop. I would like my where's my magnifier? No. Oh, kajigis. I talk to my computer all the time. Okay, this is going to be rough. I'm going to go with a magnetic. It will help. It was torn in two. It's important to make a layer of before you do much of anything, so that you always have the original to go back to. So selecting the area, this is a beginning. I'm going to cut it. Then I'm going to turn it off. No, that's not what I want to do. There. All right, now what else do I want to do? I'll transform it. Let's just see if I can give you
So
some.
he brought in the actual photograph, and then you took pictures of it and put it on your computer?
Yes, sir. I can't do this one. It's too hard.
Yeah, tell us how you did it.
Okay, I selected this area, and then, let me see if I can do this. Wait a minute, I'm not going to give up.
You should just select that area and then delete it, so it comes together.
I'm going to say no. Nope, not quite. You can't do it that way. Okay, so now, what I've done is I've created my two pieces. When I scanned it, it was one piece. I laid it on my bed. Okay, now I'm going to put it together by selecting one piece and dragging it over. And when you make an appointment, let's see, I'm going to copy this again and move it over. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have cut it. I'm going to go back and cut it. I don't want a copy of it. Okay. I'm going to turn these other layers off. That one's on. Move. And then all the rest of the precision has to go on.
So were there missing, like a little bit of missing that you had to?
Had to fill it in. You have to, let's see. Give me, oh, geez. This little keyboard does not, the Z doesn't work, and Z is for zoom. Yeah, then you have to tip it perhaps. This one came in looking like this. And that is all done by, again, going into Photoshop. Let me see. I'll go forward and see if I have a faded one to show you. This was a young man who passed away, and they wanted something, professional looking of the snapshot. Isn't that lovely? Man, we used to do this without Photoshop, of course, and it took airbrushing, and as a memorial to this mother, they wanted her. Yeah. There was nothing wrong with this one. I just added it in here as a mention of, how wonderful it is to be able to spark conversation about our ancestors. Isn't that just precious? Yes. This is how our family photographs are stored. Oh my goodness. If there's one thing you can control, paramount, is that you keep them in a controlled environment. Do not store them in the attic or the basement. Dedicate a closet or put them under the bed, something, so that they are not subject to extreme heat and humidity. And then from there, my intention is to make a book. This was the book I told you about. And I know I have one in here that's faded, so I'll answer your question there. Oh, I forgot to bring our little ornaments. Those are very cool. On the flip side, you can put in a wedding certificate or something that's meaningful to the photograph. You can decorate and dedicate a Christmas tree to your ancestors. This is all stained glass work. There's my family. One more example. This young lady died, and this mother wanted something of she and her daughter as a keepsake, so we did that. Let's see what's up. Here's my father. Snapshots are wonderful. Not everything has to be professional. Yeah. But I wanted to create a Christmas gift for the family one year, so I decided to do this. Yeah. Yeah. Just more examples of old photographs. None of these needed to be done, but this woman that brought these in, her father had a history with this ship that was out of Michigan. I don't know what it did. I don't remember the story behind it, but it was interesting that the grandmother, all of this, and then this was a drawing of the ship that she wanted to duplicate for her children and grandchildren to have. And so that was done, and there she is, all happy about it. This one came in recently. Not too badly faded. Yeah, that's Arch Rock on Mackinac Island, which no one is allowed to stand on, let alone walk under anymore. So I'm going to be fixing this one up a little bit, and I'll show you what else I'll do with it. I think I have enough time. Now here is a faded image. Yeah. And this is what we ended up doing with it. This was a tintype. Okay, we're back to there. Now which one would you like me to open? Let's see. Well, let's do this one, eh? How about it?
So now, did she answer your question about the faded photographs?
You have to, let me open up that one.
So you don't work on the original, you make a copy of it.
That's correct. No can do. Sometimes there is a lot that can be accomplished by merely adjusting the levels. to bring back information. So this was before. There's after. Personally, I didn't like the shade that the background was, and I wanted more detail in her hair. So then I proceeded to make an empty layer. By stamp, using the tool called Stamp, you can eliminate specks. Oops, too much. You never want to work at 100% opacity. You want to take it easy, a little bit at a time. Clean up the damaged areas. A little bit here. And oftentimes, I really enjoy doing this work while you're with me in the office, so that you can say, well, what about this and what about that? And then I can just go right then and show you how it'll be done. So this was, oops. Then I proceeded to lighten up the background and give some separation between her hair and the background by selecting, let's see, a little bit lighter. Oops, again, too much. The wonderful thing about Photoshop is if you don't get it right, you can always go back.
So it really doesn't matter if some of your older pictures are painted.
No.
It's you're taking the picture and the quality of the original is the quality of the original, but you can see that enhancement of the time of that picture and see your loved one in that particular time.
Yeah.
Let me see if, I brought in the already adjusted files, I'm afraid. This one wasn't too badly faded. Yeah.
And that's okay. It's like
Can I show you
most of
this?
us don't have Photoshop, so.
Okay.
Well, at least you can see that from there. I don't like the saturation of the color. I would tone all that down, and I'm sure I obviously did on this one.
But now the person you're working with could say, I actually like this. I like the background. Can you make the hair? Yeah. So you brown or whatever. Yeah.
Get the green out of stuff and whatnot.
So you're going to make an oval of that. I mean, that picture was an oval, so
I ended up, I did make it the exact same size because the client had the original frame. But you can make it a rectangle rather than oval. You can convert ovals to rectangles with the help of, Photoshop.
So you could restore, like my pictures are this big, so I want pictures that are that big, but once you've done that, you could also do an enlarged photo of the same?
Depending on the condition of the original. Some of them, I don't advise to go bigger than.
Because they're not in good enough shape to do it. Okay, gotcha.
Now to replace missing pieces like this, I'll get a general idea of how much image I need. Now go overboard. Whoop. By selecting it with a lasso tool. Then I'll drag this over to an area that has a similar, let's see if that's as big as it can get. Shades, yep, information. Right about there. I know I'm getting her ear and his hair, but I'll work with it. Duplicate that, and then move it over there. To begin the process. Now I'm going to put this image on top of that one and begin to erase it. To reveal the piece behind it. Oh, give me more. Are there any other questions I can answer for you?
Well, what about our, like, say, pre-1900 pictures? How should we keep them if they are not digital?
How do you keep a tintype, for example? What do you do with a tintype?
You can't display it. Keep it in a controlled environment is all you can do. Do not use a book of any sort that involves adhesives.
So you want like in an envelope, put it in an envelope so it's sealed, or I mean somewhat, so it's clear on both sides. It's nothing sticky, it's not acetate,
yes,
it's not
they're
anything.
archival sleeves, yeah.
Because I have a bunch of old Polaroids, and unfortunately the Polaroids, after about 20 or 30 years, start sticking, and I go peel them off and all comes fake. Whoop, that was no good.
And those height overnight processes that were going around in the 60s, boy, have they faded.
The magnetic ones were horrible too, because all of a sudden the magnetic ones, they did a real good job. They stuck there, you couldn't get them peeled off.
Right. Oh, awful, isn't it? Get them out of that, if you can. The pre-1800, you can buy archival sleeves online, I would imagine, and protect them like that if you're not going to, want to display them. I highly recommend scanning them, and I just heard that iPhone has a new app called Scan. So do it yourself. Yeah.
Is that a service though you offer if there's photos that we want to
Yes.
go ahead and store, but we can bring them to you for digital prints, so we can get the prints we want to
Exactly.
actually, to display the ones we want?
Yep.
Okay. And then store the original.
On a thumb drive or what have you. I had several clients do that, and within an hour's time, we got through probably, 40 or 50 of them. So that's that's what I'd recommend to all of your images, is to create a backup file, if you will. And something that is much more user-friendly, and that way, that part of history will always be able to be passed on for generations to come.
Now, do you take care of films and slides?
I do, yeah.
If we have negatives and we don't have a hard copy of it.
Yep. I've worked with negatives, and they are successfully converted to positives. There's a, let's see, is it on there? No. Nope. I thought there was a filter, maybe it's a filter. Can't remember how to take a negative to a positive right now. But that's a action on Photoshop that is available. Edit. Nope. Any other questions?
Did they bring a photo?
Excuse me?
We asked them if they could bring a photo.
Yes, I'd be happy to give you.
I have a question. We have a ton of family photos that are in these
Folders.
folders. Do you recommend leaving them in the folders?
They're good.
Taking them out of the folders?
I recommend leaving them in. Mm-hmm.
Because I know that, at the time, you used to go in and you would get this from the photographer.
Right.
Yeah.
And some were more elaborate than others. But they're safe in there.
Yeah.
Your skin has oils and acidity, so touching this kind of paper doesn't hurt it. But the color paper, you don't want to.
Wear white gloves.
Mm-hmm. I wish they had this paper again.
I
Aww.
was wondering how would you preserve this so that more of it doesn't
This
peel
is,
off?
I can't do a thing to originals. There's not a thing I can do, and I don't think nobody can. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's starting to crack and
Yes,
peel
it's
off.
brittle.
Yeah.
It almost needs to be in a frame solid so it never moves, right? So it just covers it around.
I guess mat it, have it matted.
Yeah. I do keep it in a, I have it in a big frame. I only hang it when company's coming over.
Okay, well,
In a window,
well now you don't want to frame it with it directly touching the glass. So how did you do that?
Well, there's matting,
All right.
so that it's not.
So you can't do anything with it?
No,
Because
Can't do anything with what?
you can't work on the original. I could copy it. She doesn't want it
I
copied.
don't want it to keep peeling. Well, and then I also have,
But you should have it mounted.
yeah.
Take it
professionally
to a frame shop if you care.
Okay. Now this one, is this?
She's
Charcoal?
beautiful. Oh, look at that.
That would be my great-great-grandmother, and this is my great-great-grandfather.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is hair? Yeah.
So you want to mark that down because the kids, the grandkids will say, I don't know who these are, throw them out, we don't care.
It's written on the back, but
What would you want to do with it? I mean,
she wondered if it was charcoal, and it is.
Yeah, do you spray it with something?
No, don't do that.
That's what I.
Do you know what year that is?
No, I don't. I have to, it's probably, I'm figuring
Yeah.
1870, 1880.
Wow, it's amazing.
That's beautiful. And if you acquire prints this size that are not mounted, have them mounted. That's why, this was on a stretcher frame, probably, because it's on linen.
Oh, okay. And then
And-
somebody cut it off then.
Well, it's still very handsome.
Linen?
Yes, it's not on canvas.
Yeah, so it would reflect something really bad.
Oh, my gosh. Now, why would they do that?
I don't know.
Primitive beginning of something, photography?
Yeah.
Huh.
Now, what one did you bring?
This one, it needs to be restored. It must have got busted coming
Yes.
by air when it came to my mother-in-law several years ago.
Oh, that wouldn't be too bad. Most people here, You've probably got some good information in their faces. It's a professional image, obviously. The mat has taken the worst hit. And this little crease, because it doesn't involve facial information, that's a big bonus. Yes.
Well, our time is up, and we thank you, Beth.
Oh, my pleasure.